Thanks, Eric. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tim Anderson. I'm the Polk County Planner. And I'm going to be talking more about the plan itself. Eric has covered a lot about the background of the program, some of the updates that have come through for the Working Lands Initiative that's been passed by the state. So I'm going to focus on the plan. And you've heard now from two presenters kind of the value of farmland here in Polk County. And first and most obviously, in updating this plan, we're obviously required to do so. And for those of you that collect tax credits, it's a mandatory step. But I think as we go into this a little bit further, we're going to want to go beyond that. We're going to listen to you as the citizens to guide that direction as to how we're going to update this plan. And I'm going to break it down into a couple of different steps, one being the requirements that the state has placed on us for things that need to be included in the plan, and then what beyond that we can do as a county here to make it more of just a broad ag land, ag business preservation plan that goes beyond what the state says, so that we can make it our own and saying how we value agriculture in this county. So first, the statutory requirements. This is kind of an overview slide. Just gives you a broad sweeping brush of what they're looking for from us, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail in terms of what the statutes actually say. I know it's pretty dry, so hang with me. So the trends in development, Eric covered some of that. We have 30-year-old information. Thankfully, for at least some of this data, we are pretty close to census information, and hopefully some of that information from the ag census will be ready for us during this process. So things that directly affect farmland, agribusiness, that's a pretty broad topic, but we're going to want to include that, especially with the talks with the ag enterprise area and how we want to move forward with that. Mapping is going to be key. As Eric showed you, we have some pretty antiquated maps now. We have fully fledged GIS systems for the most part. We can get more accurate information based on the mapping. So that will help out. We have additional layers that may not have been available, better data that wasn't available back in 1980-ish. They want to know how we plan on directing development away from prime farmland. And of course, we need to have consistency with our comprehensive plan, and this farmland preservation plan needs to be incorporated into our comprehensive plan. So directly from Chapter 91, which is the farmland preservation section of the state code. The plan must state the county's policy related to farmland preservation and agricultural development, again, including development of enterprises related to agriculture. That isn't necessarily the designation of an AEA, an ag enterprise area, but we're talking about implement dealers, farmers markets, anything that's related to the business side of agriculture. And I'll try not to read this, so it's ultra boring, but I'll try and hit on the main points. But identify, describe, and document development trends that may affect farmland preservation, agricultural development in the county, trends, plans related to population growth. I'm sure most of you have heard about the Stillwater Bridge being approved, even if we have slow economic growth right now. The fact that that bridge is going to get redone could open us up to a lot of potential development. So the timing now is actually great for us, I believe, in revising our farmland preservation plan so that we can get on top of this before the development pressure hits us, so we have the opportunity to have our say where we want to see agriculture continue and where we don't. Other things in terms of housing, transportation, communications, other business development. This could include energy, waste management, and so on. Yeah, this gets monotonous. Identify, describe, and document all the following. So, agricultural uses of land in the county at the time of farmland preservation plan is adopted. including key agricultural specialties. So if we feel like Jennifer mentioned that we have still a strong dairy presence, maybe that's something we want to keep moving forward or make sure that it's in existence for the future. Plan the necessary resources for that to continue. Key agricultural resources, including land, soil, and water. Key infrastructure for ag, like processing, storage, transportation, that kind of thing. Significant trends in the county related to ag use. We have some information over here about how ag use, or the number of acres in ag use based on assessment, has changed in the last decade and a half. It's quite significant. Anticipated changes in the nature, scope, location, and focus of ag production, supplies and distribution. Goals for agricultural development. That's, most plans have background data, and then they go through and say, lay out your goals, objectives, and policies. What do you want to see? What's your overarching wish for farmland preservation or for agricultural development for the county? How you're going to get there. Again, those are the action steps. Policies related to increasing housing density in areas that are not identified for farmland preservation, and key issues relating to farmland, preserving farmland, or promoting agricultural development and addressing those issues. One of the things that Eric mentioned is that we only have one town that's currently utilizing farmland preservation zoning or exclusive ag zoning, and something we might want to ask through this process is, what's the rationale for that? Is it something that we can address here at the county, or is it a state issue? And how might we get more participation either in that program or look for ways that we can, at the county level, maybe deal with preserving farmland, maybe not through these means, but through other means. Now I'm moving on to kind of the more or less optional, the things that we have a say directly here as citizens of Polk County in terms of how this plan gets developed. So I'm moving beyond the state requirements and looking into how we can make this a creative, all-inclusive, encompassing plan that really does work for agriculture for the future in this county. Some of you may be familiar with other tools that have been used other than the few that were listed by Eric from the state, like zoning and that kind of thing. There's transfer development rights programs, purchase of development right programs, conservation easements, and take away the development opportunity on your property, and increasing density elsewhere. I'm not going to go into each individual program. We'll talk about that when we get into the core group discussions. Another use for the plan is how to more thoroughly flesh out what we want to do with our ag enterprise area, since we have that designation. How do we want to use that? How do we want to market it? Do we want to have several niches for different suppliers? Things of that nature. So getting into the plan, one of the things that we have to do in the plan is identify those areas that are going to be preserved for farmland preservation. And there's numerous ways that we could go about doing that. But one of the more common ways of determining lands that should be included or not included in a process is called a land evaluation site assessment tool, a LESA tool. This is a two-part tool. It's developed by the NRCS. One is really clearly objective, the land evaluation part based basically on soils, productivity, that kind of thing. So it's just looking at those things that really don't change a whole lot. They're pretty well set in stone. And then there's a site assessment, which basically looks at each individual piece of property or where it's located and says, what criteria do we want to judge this piece of property on? Is it close to other existing residential developments, so there would be land use conflicts? Is it close to a processing facility? Is it contiguous with a whole lot of other ag parcels, so that it's more likely that that's all going to stay in ag? The main point of the site assessment tool is that it gives us the flexibility to make a LESA model our own. We get to choose what things matter to us in Polk County. So we say, when we apply this tool, we're including what the soils are, what the natural productivity of the land is, plus the factors that matter to us in terms of whether or not we want to preserve that land. Well, hopefully these maps will help illustrate the point better. So this is St. Croix County. I'm using them as examples. And if I'm getting it wrong, please chime in. So we have, I don't know, it's tough to see, but so they gave it some ranking in terms of a score, and they did a cutoff. So everything that's either yellow or orange is stuff that is either development or porous growing for crops and that kind of thing. And those things that are light green and dark green are those areas that fit their criteria. So again, this is based on objective productivity soils type data. Okay? So this is stuff that really doesn't change. It's not subjective, that kind of thing. And this is their site assessment map. You notice that it changed some from one to the other. And again, this goes based on the criteria that they chose in terms of maybe this area right here has a lot of contiguous parcels that are all in ag use versus an area down here or an area over here. So what's that?
Baldwin?
Yeah.
I should say, Tim, that's really where the town plans show up. That's Aaron Prairie right in the middle, Scranton, Cylon. So that's where the town plan is coming through.
That was really heavily weighted in your process. So again, this is apparently the mixture of all those choices that they used for making a site assessment calculation. The town plan weighed heavily. So that's how the site assessment map looked, and then they blended them together to produce a map that looks like this. So the first map has a score from 0 to 100, and they broke it down. The next map has a score from 0 to 100, 100 being the best. And when you combine the two, all those that received a number of 118 or better are those that made it through the cut, so to speak. So these are the areas that, based on their land evaluation and site assessment, the dark green and the light green would be the areas that they would like to see us preserved. See what I mean when the maps make a difference? So I'll go back through them, and you can see how they kind of mirror each other in some instances, but they are a good blend. So that's the land evaluation, site assessment, and then them together. Okay, so I believe this is the final slide on LESA. It's not. She's not an old girlfriend or anything, but the reason that LESA or something similar is used because it gives the people who are putting together the plan some objective criteria. So if you're asked, if you're part of this group, and you're asked, well, why did you choose these lands over other lands? You can say, well, it's because we look at these factors, and this is what we chose to come up with. So it gives you something, a rationale as to why. So it's not just willy-nilly, I like that person, I don't like that person. They shouldn't get tax credits, I should. That kind of thing. So it's more of an objective way to look at things. And it's something that you came up with to best determine what Polk County needs for the future. And in conclusion, again, thanks for bearing with me. You need to update the plan to allow for the farmers that currently have the ability to collect tax credits to continue to and offer it to new folks. Eric outlined the new scheme for collecting tax credits under the Working Lands Initiative. And of course, the state's requiring us to update this by the end of 2013. And as I mentioned through my presentation, this is an opportunity for us to go beyond that and make our statement as to how we want to view agriculture, how we want agriculture to exist from now into the future here in Polk County. And more, just as important, we want to include agricultural-related economic development. Jennifer illustrated with her statistics how important it is to this county and how important it could be for us in the future. So with that, I thank you. And any questions?